Hey everyone, it's 10 Types, and yet again we're talking about Surging Sparks. Now that there's more data on this that I played with and against more of these cards, and it's been an interesting set. I've heard some people describe it as disappointing and bad, and I don't think that's necessarily true, but there are some things that it does fall short in as well. And I want to take a look at the different cards. This is a pretty decently sized set. I am looking at Limitless and Play Limitless here, and looking at the set size, it is noticeably bigger than Stellar Crown. Of course, it is bigger than Shrouded Fable as well, which was a mini set. But this is a decent sized set. I don't know if this includes secret rares or not. It looks like it does. But regardless, Surging Sparks has been a decently large set with a bunch of good cards because of just how sets were made. Versus Stellar Crown didn't have as many like good attackers. However, Stellar Crown did have a lot of great trainers and kind of generic Pokemon. I mean, the best Pokemon from the set was. I'm not exactly sure what the best Pokemon from the set is. It's either Trapghost EX, could be like Noctowl or Fanrotom. It's probably Trapghost EX, but you could definitely make different arguments, and I don't really think I'm forgetting any other like super great Pokemon. There are certainly some playable ones, but generally the best cards were the Trapghost EX like package cards, as well as the Air Zero Under that Stadium played with in that. You got Crispin, Briar, and Sparkling Crystal as well. And those cards are really strong. On the other hand, Surging Sparks doesn't have as strong of trainers. The strongest trainer that we'll talk about, or the strongest trainer in this set, is Counter Gain. There are some other like decent trainers as well, but they're not super good. They're kind of whatever. But the best new deck, and the most played deck right now in the metagame apparently is Ceruledge EX, and I've definitely seen it some on the ladder. Ceruledge EX is an interesting Pokemon, and it's an okay Pokemon in terms of this isn't necessarily a tier list video, but I will kind of be talking about these cards within tiers. So I would say Ceruledge EX is an A tier card and an A tier deck. It's not the best deck in the game because it has what it does is it's 30 and 20 more for each energy in your discard, and that's obviously a good chunk of damage, theoretically allowing you to take one shots on like anything, and you do need a bunch of energy in your deck, though. Looking at this is the list here, just a random list, and it plays a bunch of energies. It plays 19. I've played this deck a few times. It plays like 19 or 20 energies, and you can have turns specifically, just like at various points there at the game, where you just have mostly energies and can't really do very many things. Additionally, in terms of your supporters, you need to be discarding supporters like Carmen, Professor's Research, or maybe something else like Serena or something, and that's a big commitment. Additionally, in terms of ace specs, you could play Legacy Energy. I did play Legacy Energy a few times, and it doesn't seem super great in the deck because, no, well, I guess it depends on how many night stretchers. The list I played had 2 night stretchers, but it's kind of awkward to get value out of Legacy Energy. It's not super bad, but it's kind of awkward. But then you have the ace spec of, where is it? You got Brilliant Blender here, and that's a pretty good ace spec adding to your damage, but you need to just draw into it as well. You can't really search it out at all. And in terms of gusting, you can struggle to gust as you are playing lots of discarding supporters. And then you could put other things in like Palkia, but you don't get a ton of value off of Origin Form Palkia V-Star because in terms of as an attacker, because well, admittedly I haven't played this build yet, but you don't get as much value as something like Goldango EX. Goldango EX, you need to play a lot of cards in your turn to attack. Versus Ceruledge EX, you don't need to. Admittedly, during the early game, Palkia might be like noticeably better. It's kind of just like a little bit different. I guess it's not like that much worse than in Goldango, but I personally don't love Palkia in Goldango. It does open up the opportunity for. Oh, no, I don't. Well, I don't love it in Goldango. I don't love it in Ceruledge EX either. It does open up the option for Radiant Greninja, which I think is cool. It's not like a terrible card in the deck, but it doesn't add a ton either to the deck. It just another attacker with a similar HP amount and damage output as well. But ultimately, Ceruledge GX is a pretty strong Pokemon with limited upside. It's a pretty non-versatile deck. In some ways, I'd say it's like Raging Bull Ogerpon in that, right? Where it's a deck that can be very good, and when pushed to its limit, it can be really strong, really difficult to deal with because of its high damage output. But ultimately, you're always attacking with a 2-prizer. You're not really taking extra prizes or doing anything super special and versatile. You can do some things like Briar or Palkia or in Region Below Your Pond. You have, I guess, Briar as well, and you also have different Pokemon you could play. But ultimately, you're just kind of hitting with the 2-prizer, taking knockouts, and that can be good. But against certain like 1-prizers or against like certain things that kind of wall you off. You don't really have the walls aren't that big of an issue, but it can be an issue. But certainly going in single price decks, which again yet aren't really played that much, but like Lost Zone is played a decent amount. I think it's being played with the new Pikachu EX, which by the way I haven't found super great, but regardless, you can have serious struggles if you're against like Lost Zone Radiant Charizard. You just can't do too much against it because they are a single price deck. You can do something, but not a ton. And ultimately, I think it's a deck that will never be the best deck, but it can be a strong deck. Then the other deck that I thought was a top deck was, or the card that I thought would be and create its own archetype that would be very strong, was Archaludon EX. And Archaludon EX currently on Limitless here is the 20th most played deck or 19th. It does depend on how you divide things up as well. If I combine it, it is now, oh, it's never mind. It's also 20th/19th because other's not a deck. But Archaludon EX, you have Archaludon EX, and this list plays Luxray, but you have Palkia V-Star. Honestly, I played this deck a good few times. I haven't really seen much value off of Relicanth. Could have just been like the matchups I was hitting, but didn't really see much value there. I don't think I ever really used Relicanth, but whatever. Archaludon EX is quite good for setting up Origin Form Palkia V-Star, but it still feels like you're kind of building up towards that point. Archaludon EX is very strong. It's a very solid attacker. It has high HP and solid damage output, and it's relatively low commitment that ultimately I feel like you will struggle to find a consistent like upside, kind of like Ceruledge EX, where you're a relatively simple deck. Now you can play it with more healing options, and you can just lean into the tankiness and also lean into the like solid damage early game. We see a lot of gust in a lot of Archaludon EX lists, and then if you're able to get gusting on basic two prizers, then you can take two prizes pretty consistently, which is nice. But ultimately, I feel like it's a deck, yet again, like the other, like Ceruledge EX and like a few other decks in the metagame with a capped upside. Even if you are going out your best, you're not necessarily what am I saying? You're not necessarily able to compete with the top decks. In this case, you're not able to necessarily like one-shot stuff, like something like say a Charizard EX or Dragapult EX or whatever. And you're able to kind of heal and tank and stuff, but it's not always going to be enough when they are more in control of the pace of the game. Then the third, I guess, good attacker is Hydreigon EX. Admittedly, this was a card I was more hesitant on. It does have two attacks here. It has seen more play than Archaludon EX, being played at the 11th most played, or 14th, or I guess 10th and 13th. And that's okay. Like, ultimately, Hydreigon EX is kind of okay. You can play with Lost Zone. I have not actually played, like, Lost Zone Stage 2 decks are kind of sketchy. Ultimately, you're not always going to be able to get consistent value off of Hydreigon EX in this situation as well, because you're a Lost Zone deck with, like, a Stage 2. And I haven't even, like, I think I played against it once or something, and I don't think they got Hydreigon EX out. I don't know if I won or if I lost, but it just was Lost Zone. Either they didn't set up at all and then they quit early on, or I just got like obliterated by Cramorant and stabilized and Radiant Greninjas early on. But regardless, I said they bricked. I could have knocked out their dinos repeatedly or something like that as well. But anyways, I'd say a more like normal list is one like this with Pidgeot EX, Hydreigon EX, and some various different pieces, including Counter Gain. This is a deck that can make solid use of Counter Gain, but regardless, you cannot consistently attack with the second attack here. You do need Neo Upper Energy to do so in this list, and you could kind of play like Crispin and some other things and kind of find ways to attack without Neo Upper Energy, but that's pretty awkward. I mean, you could use Lost Zone as well, but I'd say that's still awkward. You have other things to fall back on, but regardless, in this deck, you can power up the first attack, and it is okay, but ultimately it's an attack that's weaker than Charizard EX, and most attackers are weaker than Charizard EX, but in some ways they're comparable as they are both stage two prizers that they also have like mediocre damage output, but Charizard EX can ramp to higher damage in the later game, and also it essentially powers itself up like completely with its ability, versus Hydreigon EX doesn't do any of that. It does have a tiny bit more damage early game, but that doesn't really matter that much. More importantly, though, it does have the mill option, which is like okay, or it's not really an option. You have to do it, and that like adds some value, but it doesn't add that much value. Ultimately, the first attack is not a reason to play this card, and the second attack is very good when 32 they're active and 2 benched, which is quite good spread, but it's just hard to do and something your opponent can prepare for and see coming. Though it's not super easy to prepare for. I mean, you could play Manaphy and that does most of the job, but regardless, Hydreigon EX's second attack is very good, but awkward to set up. And you need to probably attack with two Hydreigon EXs, right? So if you want to Obsidian, you need Obsidian, then you up RNG, and like two Darkness, right? You need two Darkness. So I guess a counter gain could be used instead of a Darkness, but then you also need to be able to power up the next Hydreigon EX, and you have just a lot of different moving pieces in the deck that don't always work out, and often don't work out entirely. It's a deck that has different options and can be really good. You have stuff like Pekron EX by Mochi, you have counter gain, Neo Up RNG, Dark Patch, things like that to attack easier and stronger and buff yourself and things like that. But ultimately, they are cards that aren't always going to work, and the deck doesn't always work. It just definitely has games where you're not really able to do the things that you need to do, and a lot of times it will end up coming up short or might not really set up at all. It's not a terrible deck by any means, but it's not super strong either. Definitely, I think it's pretty clearly like a tier below Archaludon EX, which is like a half a tier below Ceruledge EX, I guess is what I'd say right now. Hydreigon EX is a deck that's fun, kind of, but it's nothing super crazy. And then, what's the next deck? I don't know. I'll talk about Slaking EX. Slaking EX has honestly impressed me. Uh, I don't. Oh, I misspelled it. Yeah, okay, so some people have played. Wait, what is this? Yeah, this is Slaking EX. I played it a little bit. This is the list I played, and it was like a big mess. It didn't really work at all. Plays like a bunch of stage ones. It's kind of sketchy, but regardless, this is the like you can just play it kind of like. Oh, I was like, why is the energy weird? It is all colorless, which is cool, giving you different options. You can play this kind of like just the other generic stage 2 decks, and you can put your attack for double turbo, which is quite nice. And you can also use different attackers. And Slaking EX is solid. I haven't played it a ton, and I don't think I've played against it at all either. The first game I played, I can be completely honest. I played against like Ancient Box. They didn't play any single point or single prize Pokemon, and I couldn't attack all game, right? I think I took, and then I played against Wug Trio, and that, went the same way. I think I took like 4 prizes with Vigoroth with a double turbo or something. But ultimately, it is an attacker that is 280 for 2 colorless on a stage 2, has 340 HP, and its ability doesn't come into effect too often. It is a bad ability. You can't attack if there are no EX or Vs on your opponent's board, but ultimately it is a very strong attack, and is solid. I end up playing a game against Ceruledge. They literally couldn't do anything. They couldn't knock out the Slaking EX. They I was able to take knockouts every single turn. You do discard an energy, but that's not that big of a deal. It's not ideal, but it is what it is. You can use double turbo energy. You can use counter gain. We see Crisp in this list as well. Ultimately, it's a pretty easy attack to pay with solid output. Slaking EX is honestly solid. I'd say it's on the same tier as Hydreigon EX. I viewed it. I'm going to be completely honest. I viewed it as like really bad. I didn't really think much about it, and I think it is solid. It might be better. It might be on the same tier as Archaludon EX, as in like a tier like 1.5 deck, I guess, like where it's like viable. Probably not one that would be. You have S tier decks, which I don't even know if they're on you right now. Then you have A tier decks or tier 1 decks, and then between tier 1 and tier 2, you have the 1.5 decks like Slaking EX, I think, or Caledon EX as well, where they're solid, not necessarily the highest tier, not necessarily what you should be looking to play if you want to do your best, but they're not bad either. There's certainly decks that can compete. I'm trying to think of an example that is like a deck that's played. I'd say Goldingo is like a tier 2 deck. Yeah, I can't think of any decks. Maybe like Ancient Box. I don't know. I have weird mixed feelings about Ancient Box. Um, but regardless, it's certainly a solid deck. It's not one that is bad. That has serious flaws as well. I think Slaking EX is one of the better attackers from the set, and it's definitely been underrated so far. Though I'm sure we will see it come more to its own. Right now, I think its win rate's like kind of bad. Oh no, it's wait, what? Oh yeah, it's all right. It's all right. I thought it was 32 wins and 39 losses. No, it's 32-29. It's a solid win rate, but obviously hasn't been played much. But regardless, definitely a card that I think has overperformed. I guess I will talk about Tatsugiri EX as well. This one's really funny with Cinnabar Lure. It is a deck that can do something if you get lucky and your opponent gets unlucky and you can just win. It's obviously not very good, but it's kind of funny and kind of worth. I don't know if it's worth mentioning, but it is funny. Then Alone Executor EX, the other Dragon EX. I don't think this deck adds anything to Regidrago. I'm going to be completely honest. I haven't really played it. I've played against it, and I played against Regidrago, and I've seen this hit the discard, and I've never been hit by it. It's like you have their first attack to power Pokemon, but I think it's worse than Dragonite. It does less damage objectively. Dragonite is 180. And then the energy acceleration is probably also accelerating less energy. And you'd rather get the energy out of your deck because it's easier to play them from your hand because you could just obviously just play one, then you can accelerate some. So Lonely Executor EX's first stack is not that good. It's almost directly outclassed by Dragonite. And then the second attack is really niche. Like I don't really know when you'd use this. I guess it's good against like Miraidon EX or something like that, but it's not even that good against that deck. It's just okay. I mean, it might be better than just attacking with like a Dragapult EX or Giratina V-Star. I mean, you don't have the downside of Giratina V-Star, but you might, if you don't get the flip you want, things can go really badly. And also, you need to be hitting into a basic, and you might not even knock out the basic that you want to be knocking out. So, it's a card with like okay value, but it's kind of sketchy. Definitely one that I think is not going to help Regidraco V-Star that much. It is a piece you could put in, but it's kind of whatever. What are the other good EXs? I guess Latias EX. Latias EX is good, I guess. I've just played it a little bit. I played against it some. It's certainly a good card. You really want to be playing Area Zero Underdepths because most decks are playing Versatility EX. You're an all basic deck, so you're probably a turbo deck. So you're playing this. You got like 3 Pokemon in play, maybe two, like that are your attackers or whatever. I mean, it's like if you're playing Rageable Ogerpon, I don't know if I've seen this put down to the board in Rageable Ogerpon. I might have. I don't really pay that much attention, to be honest. In terms of that deck, it kind of just does what it does, right? I've seen it in Miraidon. That's what I've been kind of paying attention to it in. But I'm sure it has seen play in Reachable Ogerpon. But regardless, it's like okay there, but you need lots of bench space. And there you have like your Grass Ogerpons, you have your attackers, you have your Pheasant EX, maybe Lumineon V. They're not probably not, but then you have Squawkabilly EX and Reading for Ninja, and that's more than all your bench slots already. So you probably are looking for Area Zero Underdepths, but that's not necessarily really that good in Reachable Ogerpon, but it is very good in Rhydon EX. Probably something you should be playing in Reachable Ogerpon as well. Definitely a solid card, and definitely a kind of boring card as well. I'd say it's kind of like a lot of the cards from Stellar Crown that are good, that are kind of boring. Like Area Zero Underdepths isn't a super interesting card. It has some interesting combos, but nothing super crazy. They're not as flashy as something like Charizard EX or Dragapult EX. Then we have Pikachu EX. I'm trying to think. Oh, so I haven't played against. I haven't really been playing Dragon. I haven't really seen people play Black Hero EX. It's not a terrible card, but Dragon's just okay right now, and it's not Nano, and I don't know exactly how good this is. I think it will be tied somewhat to Counter Gain as well, but we'll get to that in just a moment. But then Milotic EX, I think Milotic EX is bad. I generally my policy on like wall cards would be the best ones are just by your ability. That's how good it is. So despite the fact that Mimikyu attack's way worse, or it's worse, not that much worse, but it depends on the use cases. But generally worse, and then the HP is much lower as well. Milotic EX's ability is objectively worse, essentially. Like right now, it's objectively worse. I don't know what we'll see in the future. I think Milotic's better than, or no, I think Mimikyu's better than Milotic EX because of its better ability, and then you're probably winning anyway if they don't avoid a hit through you. Admittedly, you could be against. I don't know. I can't really think of a great example of where Milotic would be that much better. Obviously, higher damage is better. So if you are in a game where like your opponent's playing it, say Ceruledge EX, then Milotic EX is better than Mimikyu. You're one-shotting them, and you have more HP and stuff, which is generally better. But I feel like Mimikyu is still good enough. There, I guess it would depend on exactly what they're playing though as well. But regardless, I think Milotic EX is pretty underwhelming. Also, Feebas. The best Feebas is definitely the one with Ascension, right? And I played against a few people with this, at least one person, and they weren't playing it. They played this, all right, and it's not as good. And then I think he actually lost because they TM Evolutioned, and I was playing Ceruledge EX. They got a bunch of Milotics, and they also had a Mimikyu, so it didn't really matter if they had the Milotics or not. And Mimikyu's a basic as well, so I think Milotic EX is a pretty underwhelming card so far, but it's not terrible. But it's like including in the Walls deck feels kind of whatever. Then we have the last EX I'll talk about, which is going to be Pikachu EX. As an attacker, this card's really bad, right? Like it's almost impossible to pay. I think it's okay in Lost Zone. I have played some Lost Zone with it, and I haven't really been able to attack with it. Lost Zone, of course, has its issues, and it's hard to attack with. I think I might have attacked with it one game, but obviously it's kind of awkward to attack with. It's quite reminiscent of Raikou Amazing Rare. I believe it's the same attack cost, but ultimately it is a card which isn't something that you can sustainably attack with, and its ability is kind of good for like stalling, but you need to like use penny loops or whatever to be able to consistently do that. So ultimately, Pikachu EX's like stall ability isn't that good. It's kind of whatever. I think it's a card with serious potential. I guess I don't know. Like the energy cost thing is really awkward. It is good in Miraidon EX, but that's kind of whatever. It doesn't really do much in Miraidon EX other than just kind of sit there, maybe wall and attack at some point during the game if things are going in kind of weird direction. But regardless, Pikachu EX is an okay card, but definitely one that can't really be powered up very easily. Like maybe in Lost Zone it is good. I know a lot of the Lost Zone decks have been playing Pikachu EX. I don't know how many have versus how many haven't, but it's definitely a card which, like, this is. I played against Lost Zone a few times, and that's not Radiant Charizard, is it? I played against like a Radiant Charizard list. I played against different lists, and Pikachu X is okay. At the end of the day, you will be spreading your energies thinner. You're not playing Waters for Radiant Credence in this list, for example, and you're only playing 2 Psychics. You're only playing like 3 Lightning, and you have 3 different Lightning attackers, so it might not be enough. It might be enough, but regardless, it is still Lost Zone. It's still doing Lost Zone things where you're able to apply pressure in different ways. And I think Pikachu X is solid on Lost Zone. It might be better once I played with it more. I might like realize that, oh wait, this is actually super good. And it seems like it could be super good because its ability is nice. Though there are ways to break through it using like Dusknoir. Though they're not super common. I think I played Pikachu EX and the time I finally got it set up. And putting one shot at me with a Slitherwing, which is quite unfortunate. I did not win that game, but regardless, Pikachu EX is a kind of interesting card. Ultimately, kind of awkward. It does add something to Lost Zone, but I don't think it's anything super crazy. Then in terms of the single prize Pokemon, let's see what was okay. So Magneton was supposed to be good. The Magneton is good in Miraidon. Nothing too crazy to say here. Pretty good. Dusknoir is I feel like a little bit on the decline, but it's maybe that's just me hoping that it's on the decline. But I feel like I've been seeing it a little bit less, and Magneton is certainly in a better spot now that you're not really worried about Dusknoir stuff. Then the extra prizes don't really matter. And same with Briar as well. I guess this actually helps against Briar, so your opponent can't use that. But you are giving him a free prize as well. Then I think Azumarill's like kind of okay. I'm not really sure. I've seen it a few times and it hasn't been super strong, but theoretically it should be like decent. Togekiss I've seen a couple of times and it's okay. It's random and it's exactly what it looks like, but it's not super strong or super bad either. Then the Lake Trio, I've talked about this a lot. I think it's solid, not terrible, but I think it is a playable deck on like tier 2, honestly. Like I think it's an okay deck. A top like 30-ish deck right now. And it can compete. It has issues. It can't always compete. There are games you can't really like win or really play against. And I guess if people know how to play against it, then you can't really do too much about it. But it's a deck that's like fun and it's solid. Yeah, and I guess Carfagugus is like supposedly good in this deck. I haven't played Carfagugus. I don't think Carfagugus is that good. There are circumstances it's good, but then in those circumstances, Frostlass Uxie would probably be better. And in not those circumstances, then Carfagugus doesn't do any damage. So then Uxie is objectively better because it can do at least something. But ultimately, I think Carfagugus is kind of mediocre. I have not played Meowstic yet. I do want to play this at some point, but I just don't know what to play it in. So comment down below if you have any ideas for Meowstic that actually like use it well. I'm not really sure what I want to do with it, but it does seem like a cool card. There's a bunch of control things, but I haven't really played much with control in this format, or really much at all. I played a little bit of Snorlax because it's, really good in the ladder. But yeah, Gastrodon, like a control card as well. I've not played against this. I've not played with this, and I haven't played against too many situations where where it would be super useful. I played a few where it would have been like okay, where they got Dusknoir and they got Pidgeot EX, and it is good there, but your opponent can kind of play around that as well, using the free retreat on Pidgeot EX and using like Dusknoir essentially also being a pivot. So at that point, Gastrodon's not really doing anything, but it might be an okay card, but it has some serious downsides with its high retreat and the fact that it just won't do anything, and it's a stage 1. There's a bunch of downsides. Koraidon I've not played with. I've not played against it, which I'm really surprised about because I've been playing against a lot of Raging Bull Ogerpon, and I've yet to see someone pull out Koraidon. I've been playing against Aetrobox. I've been playing against what else? Roaring Moon. I've been playing against all these different ancient decks, and I haven't really seen Koraidon. I think it's pretty good, but I haven't played with it, so I can't really say too much on it. But it seems like a really solid card. Then I guess that's. I feel like there's got to be like one more card that I'm forgetting about. One more Pokemon. That might be it for Pokemon, but whatever. Then we have the trainers, and I played a Slaking deck, and I played Gravity Mountain. It was one of the ones I was just showing that I got off of Limitless. And I don't know, it seems really bad. Like, how often do you need Gravity Mountain? Because you're also a stage 2 deck. So I had a situation where I was like, oh, I can get a free stadium, and I wanted to bump my opponent's stadium, and I played close to Tenacity, so I didn't end up getting Gravity Mountain. But if I had played that, I would have just like knocked myself out, which would have been bad. But regardless, Gravity Mountain's like kind of cool. Haven't really Honestly, haven't played against too much Charizard or Dragon Ball, like really not much at all. It is really nice with certain math there, but ultimately it's useless all the rest of the time. And there are some like funny cases with like Serena EX. It's a cool card in terms of its design, but haven't really seen it come into effect or too many times so I wanted to be able to play it either. Then we have Lively Stadium. I haven't really seen this too much. I feel like it's like okay, but people do have stadium bumps. In terms of the ace specs, I talked about Brilliant Blender, and there's not too much to say about it. It just is what it is. And G Search Pro, I don't think I've really seen much. I saw it like once or twice in Goldango. It's like okay, I guess. It's pretty solid there. I play some Scramble Switch, which is kind of funny. In the Archaludon deck, it's okay, I suppose, but it's nothing super crazy. It's just kind of low power, to be honest. And then Precious Trolley, I've seen this card played a lot. It's felt kind of whatever. A lot of the time, my opponent just grabs like I mean, you get lots of basics, but it feels kind of like you just grab a mishmash of basics that they just hit the board and they just kind of sit there and just I don't know. I don't really know. It's an okay ace spec. It's certainly not bad, but it's not super great either. Then I haven't really played with or against any of the supporters. I do want to play with some of these at some point, but I haven't played with them or seen them yet. I haven't really seen most of these cards, except I have seen Counter Gain. I've played with this some. Counter Gain, I think it's the best card in this set. I'm not sure. It is also weird. It's like a reprint, so it's a reprint, but it's a reprint of a card that wasn't in standard for a while, so it's not like a reprint keeping a card in format. It's bringing it into format or bringing it back into format. But ultimately, Counter Gain being able to attack with one less energy is really good. We've seen cards like this. We saw Thunder Mountain Prism Star, and we of course have Sparkling Crystal, and those are one copy per deck cards, and they're good. And Counter Gain is kind of like them, but it's not limited on is one of per deck. It doesn't like stack. I mean, it would, I guess, but you can't put two tools into Pokemon really. Trust me, I've looked at Honchkrow V. I'm pretty sure that's the only one like that in standard. And well, you could. It does stack, but there isn't really any value you'd be getting off of that. You could be using like a TM plus a bunch of counter gains or something, but that seems kind of bad because there's only two counter gains you can that are multiple energies anyway, and they're niche. Well, there's three. I guess there's the new one, TM Fluorite, but that one's kind of bad. Well, believe it or not, I have not seen this card either. But counter gain seems good. It's okay in Hydreigon EX. It's really, I think, theoretically good in Slaking EX. I think it's good in Terapagos. I haven't really played against too much Terapagos, and I haven't seen them play counter gain, but it seems like it's really good in Terapagos EX because of Dusknoir to activate it. Then, of course, you have yourself, like, it allows you to play more energies. One way that the deck kind of loses running out of energies. That's mostly against control, I suppose, but you can struggle to get the energies as well. Closest Tenacity is good for getting them, but also you could play Kyurem. Kyurem is definitely a card that I definitely consider playing. Like it has value against some of these decks. Wait, what is this? Apparently you can recover these special energies in this list with Regidrago V-Star, which is kind of interesting and not what I was expecting. Counter Gain, though, I think is going to be good in this deck. You could play like Jet Energies, which Jet Energy already has value with Fan Rotom, and overall I think it is a cool addition to the deck. It could be good on Blood Moon or Luna EX. It could be good on just different Pokemon, but overall I think this set's okay. Counter Gain is a good card. I don't think it's a bad set, but I don't think it's a great set either. I think Pokemon's been tuning down their sets as well in terms of the best attackers in the sets. Strapgos EX is certainly a solid attacker and is arguably in the top tier of the game, but also it's not like anything super flashy. And then you have this new set where things aren't as impressive. Honestly, all the sets from this year, I guess Temporal Forces had it had a good few cards. What was in the set? I don't remember. I always get Temporal Forces and Paradox Rift mixed up, but it had Raging Bull EX, or I don't get the sets mixed up, but I get mixed up what's exactly in them. It had Raging Bull EX, though, which was a very good attacker, or is a very good attacker. Wasn't very good at the time, but you had Twilight Masquerade with Teal Master Ponyx, as well as some other really good cards, but ultimately in terms of main attackers, they've been tamer compared to Scarlet Violet base set, as well as Paldea Evolved, Obsidian Flames. I guess really those three. Then Paradox Shift did have some good attackers as well, but then you did have Obsidian Flames with Charizard EX, as well as Pidgeot EX, which was really strong in a deck of its own. Then Chimpap Excalibur and Paldea Evolved, which was very good at the time, not as good now, but was pretty insane. And then you had Scarlet Violet base set. You had Miraidon EX, but then you had Gardevoir EX as well, which was really, really good, especially when it came out with one of the best evolution lines ever with 3 different cards that were super good. But ultimately, Pokemon has been tuning down the sets, but I don't think Surging Sparks is a bad or disappointing set either. There's some really cool stuff that I didn't really talk about in this video either that I've talked about in the past. But anyways, tell me what you think of the set down below in the comments. But I hope you enjoyed the video. Consider liking and subscribing, hitting the bell, all that good stuff. And as always, I'm excited to see you in the next video.